Some moments change everything. A single phone call, a whispered confession, a hand reaching out in the darkness. For me, it was the night my best friend Lucas showed up at my door at midnight, drenched from the rain, asking if he could stay. I said yes without hesitation. I had no idea that simple act of kindness would unravel everything I thought I knew about friendship, love, and the walls we build around our hearts. My name is Adrian, and this is the story of how I helped my best friend and discovered that sometimes the person you've been searching for has been standing beside you all along. The Seattle rain hammered against my apartment windows like 1,000 tiny drummers, creating a rhythm that usually lulled me to sleep. But tonight, at 11:47 p.m., I was wide awake, staring at my laptop screen, trying to finish a graphic design project that was due Monday morning. My coffee had gone cold an hour ago, and my eyes burned from the blue light. When my phone buzzed on the desk, I almost ignored it. But the name on the screen made me pause. Lucas Moreno. Lucas never called this late. In the 7 years we'd been friends since we met in a college art history class where we both showed up hungover and bonded over our mutual appreciation for Caravaggio and terrible decisions, he'd always been the responsible one, the planner, the guy who color-coded his calendar and actually read instruction manuals. "Hey," I answered, trying to sound more awake than I felt. "Everything okay?" Silence. Then a shaky breath that made my chest tighten. "Adrian, His voice cracked. "Can I come over? I know it's late, but I can't be at my place right now." I was already standing, abandoning my laptop. "Are you hurt?" "What happened?" "I'm fine. Physically, another pause, longer this time. I need somewhere to go." "Is that okay?" "Of course. Get here safely." "I'll put coffee on." 20 minutes later, there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find Lucas standing in the hallway, soaked to the bone. Water dripped from his dark curls, running down his face like tears, though I suspected some of them actually were tears. He wore jeans and a thin t-shirt, no jacket despite the October chill, and carried a backpack that looked hastily packed. "Jesus." "Lucas, come in." I grabbed his arm and pulled him inside, immediately going for the towels I kept in the bathroom closet. When I returned, he was standing in my entryway, creating a puddle on the hardwood floor.
Ow.
Looking more lost than I'd ever seen him. Lucas Moreno was the kind of beautiful that made people do double takes. Sharp jawline, warm brown skin that glowed golden in the right light, eyes so dark they were almost black. He kept his hair a bit longer than was fashionable, curling at his collar in a way that made him look like he'd stepped out of a Renaissance painting. At 6'2", he had the lean build of a runner, all long limbs and elegant movement. But tonight, that usual grace was gone. He looked broken. "Here." I wrapped a towel around his shoulders. "You want to tell me what happened? Or do you want to get dry first?" He kicked me out. The words came out flat, emotionless. David, he came home early from his business trip and found the emails. My blood went cold. David Martinez, Lucas's boyfriend of 3 years. I'd never liked him, though I'd kept that opinion mostly to myself. He was one of those guys who smiled with his mouth but never his eyes, who always seemed to be calculating something. He worked in tech, made good money, and treated Lucas like an accessory to his carefully curated life. "What emails?" I asked, though part of me already knew. Lucas met my eyes, and I saw shame there, mixed with defiance. "From Carlos. From 6 months ago. We talked. That's all. Just talked. After what happened between us, I needed closure, I guess." But David saw the messages and assumed. He laughed bitterly. "Hell, he's been cheating on me for 8 months. I found proof on his laptop 2 weeks ago. But somehow, my emails to my ex are the unforgivable sin." I knew about Carlos, the first man Lucas had ever loved, back when we were 23. Carlos had shattered him, choosing his family's approval over their relationship. Marrying a woman his parents selected and leaving Lucas to pick up the pieces. I'd been there for that aftermath, holding Lucas while he cried, helping him remember how to smile again, so he kicked you out. Just like that? "It's your apartment too. His name's on the lease." He said if I wasn't gone in 20 minutes, he'd call the cops and claim I was threatening him.
Oh.
Lucas's hands were shaking. I grabbed what I could and left. I didn't know where else to go. You always have a place here. Always. I guided him toward my bathroom. Take a hot shower. I'll find you some dry clothes. Then we'll figure this out. He nodded, finally letting the towel fall, and I saw the exhaustion written across his features. As he disappeared into the bathroom, I heard the shower turn on, and I released a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. I dug through my dresser for clothes that might fit Lucas. We were similar in height, though he was leaner than me. I'd always been broader in the shoulders, more solid where he was graceful. I found sweatpants and an old university hoodie, setting them outside the bathroom door with a soft knock while he showered. I stripped the sheets from my bed and remade it with fresh ones. Lucas would take the bedroom. I'd sleep on the couch. That's what friends did. That's what I'd always done, put Lucas's needs before my own. Even when it hurt. Especially when it hurt. Because here's the thing I'd never told him. Never told anyone I'd been in love with Lucas Moreno since the day we met. I still remembered it perfectly. September 2019, Art History 301. Professor Chen droning on about chiaroscuro. Lucas had stumbled in 15 minutes late, apologizing profusely, his hair a mess and his shirt on backwards. He'd collapsed into the empty seat next to me and whispered, "Please tell me you're taking notes. I can't feel my brain." I'd slid my notebook over and he'd flashed me a smile that stopped my heart. 7 years later, that smile still had the same effect, but Lucas had never looked at me that way. He'd dated Carlos, then David, and a few others in between. I'd become his best friend, his confidant, the person he called when he needed someone. And I'd learned to be content with that, because having him in my life as a friend was better than not having him at all, even if sometimes. Late at night, I let myself imagine what it would feel like to kiss him, to wake up next to him, to be the one he loved instead of the one he called when love went wrong. The bathroom door opened, releasing a cloud of steam. Lucas emerged wearing my clothes, his hair still damp, hanging in dark waves around his face. He looked younger somehow, vulnerable in a way that made my chest ache. "Feel better?" I asked. "A little. Thank you, Adrian. For this. For everything." He crossed the room and pulled me into a hug. And I let myself have this moment, this brief excuse to hold him, to breathe in the scent of my shampoo in his hair and feel the warmth of his body against mine. When we separated, I kept my expression carefully neutral. "You want to talk about it? Or would you rather just crash? Talk, if that's okay? I feel like I'm going to explode if I don't get this out." We settled on my couch, Lucas curling into the corner with a throw blanket wrapped around him. Me on the other end, with my legs tucked under me. The rain continued its percussion against the windows, creating a cocoon of sound around us. "I should have seen it coming," Lucas began, his voice quiet. "With David, the late nights, the sudden business trips, the way he stopped touching me. I mean, we haven't had sex in 4 months, Adrian. For months. And I told myself it was stress, work, whatever. But I knew. I wanted to reach out to touch his hand, but I kept myself still. You said you found proof? He left his laptop open 2 weeks ago. I wasn't snooping, I swear. I just needed to check my email and mine was dead. But there were messages up on the screen. From someone named Tyler, saying he couldn't wait to see David again. Calling him baby. Sending. Lucas swallowed hard. Sending pictures? Explicit ones. Anger flared hot in my chest. Lucas, I'm so sorry. You deserved better than that. Did I, though? His eyes met mine, and there was something raw in them, something searching. I mean, I reached out to Carlos. Even though nothing happened, even though we just talked, I still did it while I was with David. Doesn't that make me just as bad? No, the word came out more forcefully than I intended. Talking to an ex about closure is not the same as cheating. And you did it because you were trying to figure out why your relationship with David felt wrong. Because some part of you already knew he'd checked out. Lucas was quiet for a long moment, studying me. Then, how do you always know what to say? How are you always so steady? Because I've loved you for 7 years and learned to hide it, I thought. Because I've made an art form of being what you need while wanting what I can't have. Out loud, said, because I'm your friend. And friends show up for each other, smiled, sad and small. You're more than that. You're the best person I know, Adrian. The words hit me like a physical blow. I forced myself to smile back. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we'll figure out the logistics getting your stuff from David's, finding you a place, all of it. But tonight, just rest. I can take the couch, bedroom, non-negotiable. I'll be fine out here. Lucas stood, hesitating. Then he crossed to me and pressed a kiss to my forehead, his lips warm and soft. Thank you. I don't know what I'd do without you. Then he was gone. Disappearing into my bedroom and closing the door softly behind him, I sat in the darkness, listening to the rain, touching the spot on my forehead where his lips had been. My heart was a caged bird, beating against my ribs, and I wondered how much longer I could keep it locked away. I didn't sleep that night. How could I, with Lucas just 20 feet away, sleeping in my bed, wearing my clothes, safe under my roof? I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, and let myself imagine alternate universes where I'd been braver, where I'd told him the truth years ago, where maybe, just maybe, he would have chosen me, but I hadn't been brave. And now here we were. Around 3 a.m., I heard my bedroom door open. Footsteps padded softly across the hardwood floor. I sat up to find Lucas standing in the middle of my living room, silhouetted by the city lights filtering through the windows. Can't sleep? I asked quietly. Keep thinking about everything. About what happens next. About. He trailed off, then walked to the couch. Can I sit with you? Just for a bit? I shifted over, making room, and he settled beside me, closer than necessary. Close enough that I could feel the heat of him, could smell the lingering scent of soap on his skin. I keep wondering why I stayed with David so long, Lucas said, his voice barely above a whisper. Even before I knew about the cheating, it never felt right. Not like what? He turned to look at me, and in the dim light, his eyes were fathomless. Not like it did with Carlos, at least at first. That felt like lightning, like being set on fire. But this, he gestured vaguely. This felt safe, comfortable, and I thought maybe that's what adult relationships were supposed to be. Less fire, more stability. But you weren't happy. No, I wasn't. He leaned his head back against the couch, exposing the long line of his throat. You know what's funny? The happiest I am is when I'm with you. When we're just hanging out, grabbing coffee, arguing about movies, staying up too late, talking about nothing and everything. I feel more myself with you than I ever did with David. My heart was hammering so hard I was sure he could hear it. Lucas, I'm sorry. I'm probably not making sense. I'm tired and emotionally destroyed, and I shouldn't be dumping all this on you. He started to stand, but I caught his wrist. Wait, if you want. You don't have to go back to bed alone if you don't want to. He looked at my hand on his wrist, then at my face. Something shifted in his expression, something I couldn't quite read. Then he nodded and settled back beside me, this time even closer. So close that when he leaned his head on my shoulder, I could count his heartbeats. We stayed like that as the rain slowed to a drizzle. As the city began its slow wake-up, as the sky lightened from black to deep blue to pale gray, I didn't dare move, didn't dare break whatever spell had settled over us just before dawn. Lucas's breathing evened out, and I realized he'd fallen asleep. His weight was warm against my side, his hand resting on my chest right over my heart. I let myself have this. Just this one moment of pretending. Of imagining that this was my life, Lucas choosing to fall asleep next to me, Lucas trusting me with his vulnerability. Lucas's hand over my heart as if he knew it belonged to him. Then I closed my eyes and finally let sleep claim me, knowing that when we woke, reality would reassert itself. I would be the friend again, the helper, the one who was always there but never chosen. But for now, for these few stolen hours, I let myself have this beautiful lie. I woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the smell of coffee. For a disoriented moment, I I couldn't remember why I was on the couch, why every muscle ached from an awkward sleeping position. Then memory flooded back, Lucas. The rain, David's betrayal. Falling asleep together on the couch. Lucas, I sat up quickly, looking around. The blanket that had been draped over us last night was now tucked carefully around me. From the kitchen came the sound of movement. The clink of mugs. I found him standing at my counter, pouring coffee into 2 cups, looking almost domestic in my oversized hoodie. The morning light caught in his hair, turning it auburn at the edges, and something in my chest twisted painfully. "You're awake?" He smiled, and it almost reached his eyes. "I made coffee." "Well, I tried." "Your machine is different from mine. I'm sure it's perfect." I accepted the mug he offered, our fingers brushing in the exchange. The contact sent electricity up my arm, and I quickly pulled away. "How'd you sleep?" "Eventually, better than I have in months, actually." He leaned against the counter, cradling his coffee. "I haven't slept that well since. I don't know. Maybe since college?" We stood in comfortable silence, drinking our coffee, and I tried not to think about how right this felt. How easy it would be to imagine this as our morning routine instead of an anomaly. "I need to go back," Lucas said finally. "To David's. My stuff. I was thinking maybe this afternoon. Would you? Would you come with me? I don't want to face him alone." "Of course. Whatever you need." His expression softened. "You always say that. Whatever you need. Like there's nothing I could ask that you wouldn't do." "You have no idea how true that is," I thought. Out loud, that's what friends are for. Something flickered across his face. Disappointment, maybe. But it was gone before I could be sure. Right? Friends? We spent the morning in my apartment, Lucas making calls to find temporary housing while I worked on my design project. Or tried to. Mostly I found myself watching him out of the corner of my eye, noticing the way he chewed his bottom lip when he was concentrating, how he gestured with his hands when he talked on the phone, the grace in his movements even when he was distressed around noon. My phone buzzed with a text from Maya, my older sister. "Coffee tomorrow? I need to vent about Mom's latest." I typed back, "Can't tomorrow. Maybe next week?" Something came up. Her response was immediate. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, just helping Lucas with something." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "Lucas, huh? You can't keep doing this to yourself, right?" I stared at the message. Maya was the only person who knew about my feelings for Lucas. I'd confessed it to her 2 years ago, drunk on wine during Christmas break. And she'd held me while I cried about loving someone who would never love me back. "I'm fine," I typed. "Just being a friend. That's what I'm worried about," she replied. "But okay. Call me if you need to talk." I set my phone down and found Lucas watching me, a question in his eyes. "Everything good?" he asked. "Yeah, just Maya being Maya." I stood, stretching. "You hungry? We should eat before we head to David's." We ordered Thai food and ate it sitting on my living room floor. The containers spread between us like we'd done countless times before. Lucas told me about the apartments he'd looked at, none of which felt right. Too expensive, or too far from his work, or too depressing. "You can stay here as long as you need," I offered. "Seriously. I have the space, Adrian. I can't impose on you like that. It's not an imposition. You're my best friend. Besides, I hate living alone. You'd actually be doing me a favor." He was quiet, twirling pad thai around his fork. "What if it's not just a few days? What if it takes weeks to find a place?" "Then it takes weeks." "Lucas, I mean it. Stay." When he looked up, his eyes were bright with emotion. "Why are you so good to me?" "Because I love you. Because I'd give you anything, everything, if you'd just let me. Because the thought of you struggling alone makes me feel like I'm drowning. Because you'd do the same for me," I said instead. "Would I, though?" He set down his fork. "I don't know if I'm as good a friend as you are." "I don't know if anyone is, Lucas." "No, I mean it. I look at you, and I see someone who has his life together. You're talented, successful, kind. You have this inner peace about you. And then I look at me and I see someone who keeps making the same mistakes over and over, Who let David walk all over him because he was too scared to be alone? Who's 30 years old and starting over for the third time? I moved the food containers aside and slid closer to him. You're being too hard on yourself. You're not starting over. You're moving forward. And for what it's worth, I don't have it as together as you think. I'm good at pretending, that's all. He studied my face, his gaze intense. What are you pretending about? Everything. My feelings. My want. The fact that sitting this close to you is both heaven and torture? Everyone pretends, I said carefully. We all have things we keep hidden. What do you keep hidden, Adrian? In 7 years, I feel like I know you better than anyone. But sometimes I wonder if there's this whole other person beneath the surface. Someone you don't let anyone see. My heart was racing. This felt dangerous, like standing at the edge of a cliff. Maybe there is. Maybe we all have versions of ourselves we keep locked away. What if I want to see that version? The real you? Not just the best friend who's always there, always supportive, always saying the right thing. I couldn't breathe. The air between us felt charged, electric. Lucas was looking at me like he was trying to solve a puzzle, like I was a mystery he desperately wanted to understand.
Ow, Lucas.
My voice came out rough. What are you asking me? He opened his mouth, closed it, shook his head. I don't know. I'm not making sense. I'm sorry. I think everything with David is messing with my head. The moment broke. I sat back, putting distance between us, and forced a smile. It's okay. You've been through a lot. We should probably get going if we're going to David's. He nodded, but something had shifted in his expression. As we cleaned up and got ready to leave, I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd almost stepped over a line, that he'd been about to say something important, something that might have changed everything. But maybe I was just reading what I wanted to see. Maybe I was the only one who felt the electricity between us. Maybe I'd been alone in this feeling for 7 years and would continue to be alone in it. The thought shouldn't have hurt as much as it did. I was used to it by now, or at least, I thought I was. David's apartment, Lucas's former apartment, was in one of Seattle's trendier neighborhoods. All glass and steel and expensive coffee shops. We took my car, and the drive was quiet, Lucas staring out the window at the gray afternoon, his jaw tight. You don't have to do this today, I offered. We can wait. Come back when you're ready. I need to do it now. Before I lose my nerve, he looked at me. But thank you. For offering? For being here. I pulled into the building's garage and killed the engine. For a moment, we sat in silence. What if he tries to make me feel guilty? Lucas asked quietly. What if he tries to convince me I'm the one who ruined everything? Then you remember the truth. Remember the photos on his laptop? Remember that he made his choices and they had nothing to do with you. Lucas nodded, taking a deep breath. Okay, let's do this. We rode the elevator to the 8th floor, and with each passing floor, I could see Lucas tensing beside me. When the doors opened, he didn't move immediately. I waited, letting him gather his courage. Finally, he stepped out, and I followed. David answered on the second knock. He was wearing designer loungewear, his hair perfectly styled even at 3 in the afternoon. His expression cold when he saw us. Double quotes, Lucas. And you brought. Adrian. He said my name like it tasted bad. I'm just here to get my things, Lucas said. His voice steady, despite the tremor I could hear underneath. David stepped aside, letting us in. The apartment was immaculate, as always. Modern furniture, abstract art on the walls, everything in shades of white and gray. It had never felt warm to me, had always seemed more like a showroom than a home. I packed some of your stuff already, David said, gesturing to boxes stacked by the door. Figured you'd be back for it eventually. Lucas stared at the boxers. That's efficient. I'm a practical person. You know that. David crossed his arms. Look, I'm sorry things ended the way they did. But I think we can both agree this relationship had run its course. You were cheating on me, Lucas said flatly. For 8 months. And you were still hung up on your ex. Seems like we were both checked out. I felt my hands curl into fists. Lucas put a hand on my arm, a warning. Or maybe just seeking support. I'm not doing this, Lucas said. I'm not having this argument. I'm just going to get the rest of my stuff and leave. He headed toward the bedroom, and I started to follow. But David blocked my path. You know what's funny? David said, his voice low enough that Lucas wouldn't hear from the other room. He talks about you constantly. Adrian this, Adrian that. I used to wonder if you two were secretly together. We're friends, I said evenly. Right, friends? David smiled, but it was sharp. You're in love with him, aren't you? I can see it every time you look at him. But he doesn't see you that way. He never will. So you're stuck in this perpetual friend zone, always hoping, never getting what you actually want. The words hit their mark, but I kept my expression neutral. You don't know what you're talking about, don't I? I've watched you for 3 years, Adrian. Always showing up, always available, always there. It's pathetic, honestly. You're like a puppy begging for scraps of attention. At least I actually care about him, which is more than you ever did. David's smile widened. Oh, I cared. For a while, but the truth is, Lucas is exhausting. All that emotional intensity, all that neediness. He wants someone to save him, to make him feel whole, but no one can do that for him. Not me, and certainly not you. Eventually you'll figure that out too. Is everything okay out here? Lucas emerged from the bedroom carrying a duffel bag, his eyes moving between us suspiciously. Fine, I said quickly. Just having a chat. Lucas didn't look convinced, but he didn't push. Over the next hour, we gathered the rest of his belongings, clothes, books, personal items. David mostly stayed out of the way, occasionally making passive-aggressive comments that Lucas ignored with impressive restraint. When we were finally done, 6 boxes and 3 bags packed into my car, Lucas stood in the doorway one last time, looking at the apartment that had been his home. I loved you, he said to David. Maybe not the way you deserved, maybe not enough, but I did love you. David's expression softened, just slightly. I know, and I loved you too. But sometimes love isn't enough. No, I guess it's not. He left without another word. In the car, Lucas was quiet. I didn't try to fill the silence, just drove, letting him process. We were almost back to my apartment when he finally spoke. What did David say to you? When I was in the bedroom, I considered lying, but Lucas knew me too well. He'd see through it. Nothing important. Just him being an ass, Adrian, I sighed. He said he thinks I'm in love with you, and that you'll never see me that way. Lucas went very still. And what did you say? That we're friends. That he doesn't know what he's talking about. Is he right? The question hung in the air between us, heavy and dangerous. I kept my eyes on the road, my hands gripping the steering wheel. Does it matter? I asked finally. Yes, it matters. Adrian, look at me. I couldn't. If I looked at him, he'd see everything. 7 years of longing, of secret glances and unspoken words, of loving him from a distance. Please, he whispered. I pulled into my apartment building's parking garage and finally turned to face him. His eyes were wide, searching mine with an intensity that stole my breath. Is it true? He asked, are you? Do you have feelings for me? Real feelings, not just friendship? And here it was. The moment I'd feared and fantasized about in equal measure. The cliff's edge. The point of no return. I could lie. Protect myself. Protect our friendship. Keep everything the way it had always been. Or I could jump, as I whispered. I'm in love with you. I have been for 7 years. The silence that followed my confession felt infinite. Lucas stared at me, his lips parted, his eyes wide with shock. I couldn't read his expression, surprise, yes, but beyond that, I had no idea what he was thinking. I looked away first, shame burning through me. I shouldn't have said that. Get it. You're going through enough without me adding to 7 years? His voice was barely audible. Lucas, please. Can we just pretend I didn't 7 years, Adrian? Since we met? I forced myself to look at him again. Since the day you sat next to me in art history. Since you smiled at me and asked if you could borrow my notes. Since that first coffee shop hangout that turned into 4 hours of talking about nothing and everything. Since I realized that every moment with you felt more real than any moment without you. He was shaking his head, but I couldn't stop now. The dam had broken, and words were flooding out. I know you don't feel the same way. I've always known. And I made peace with it because having you as my friend was better than not having you at all. But David was right. I've been in love with you this whole time. It's watching you date other people, being happy for you, even when it killed me, because that's what you do when you love someone. You want them to be happy, even if it's not with you. Stop. Lucas's voice was sharp. Just stop for a second and let me think. I closed my mouth, my heart hammering against my ribs. This was it. This was where I lost him. Where he would thank me for my honesty, tell me he valued our friendship too much to risk it. Everything would become awkward and broken. Lucas closed his eyes, his hands clenched into fists in his lap. I watched a muscle jump in his jaw, watched him take several deep breaths. When he opened his eyes, they were bright with tears. Do you know why I reached out to Carlos 6 months ago? He asked. The subject changed through me. You said you needed closure. That's what I told David. That's what I told myself. But the truth is, I reached out because I was trying to figure out why I couldn't make myself love David the way I was supposed to. Why being with him felt like wearing someone else's clothes. Technically they fit, but they never felt quite right. He turned in his seat to face me fully. I asked Carlos if he ever wondered what would have happened if we'd stayed together. If we would have been happy. And you know what he told me? I shook my head, not trusting my voice. He said that what we had was intense, but not sustainable. That we were both too young, too damaged, trying to heal each other instead of healing ourselves. And he was right. What Carlos and I had wasn't love. It was need, desperation, to people clinging to each other in the dark. Lucas reached out, his hand hovering near mine on the center console, not quite touching. But then he asked me if there was someone else. Someone who made me feel safe instead of scared. Someone who knew all of me, the good parts and the broken parts, and stayed anyway. And the only person I could think of was you. My breath caught. I told myself it was just friendship, Lucas continued, his voice rough with emotion. That the reason I was happiest when I was with you was because we were best friends. That the reason I thought about you first thing in the morning and last thing at night was because you were important to me. That the reason my heart raced when you smiled at me was just, I don't know, caffeine. He laughed, but it was broken. God, I'm an idiot. How did I not see it? How did I not realize that I've been in love with you too? The world stopped spinning. What? The word came out as barely a breath. I'm in love with you, Adrian. I think I have been for years, but I was too scared to admit it. Too scared to risk what we had. Too scared that maybe I was imagining it. That maybe you were just being kind and I was reading too much into every gesture, every look, every moment. He finally bridged the distance, taking my hand in his. His fingers were trembling. Last night, I was falling asleep next to you on the couch. That was the first time in years I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. And this morning, making coffee in your kitchen, I kept thinking about how easy it would be to do that every day. How right it felt. Lucas. I didn't know what to say. My brain couldn't process this. Couldn't believe it was real. When David said you were in love with me, for a second, I felt the surge of hope so strong it almost knocked me over. And I realized that's what I've been waiting for. For you to see me? Really see me? Not as a friend, but as someone you could love. I do see you, I said, finally finding my voice. I've always seen you. Every brilliant, beautiful, broken piece of you. I see the way you light up when you talk about architecture. The way you chew your lip when you're concentrating. The way you laugh with your whole body. I see your kindness and your strength and your vulnerability. I see all of it, Lucas, and I love all of it. A tear slid down his cheek. Then why didn't you tell me? Why did we waste 7 years? Because I was scared. Because I thought if I told you and you didn't feel the same way, I'd lose you completely. And I couldn't risk that. I couldn't risk losing you. You wouldn't have lost me. You could never lose me. He squeezed my hand. Adrian, you're the most constant thing in my life. You're my anchor, my safe harbor, the person I run to when everything else falls apart. But that's exactly what I was afraid of, I said. That I was just the safe option. The backup plan. That you'd only see me that way because I was always there. No. Lucas shook his head firmly. You're not the backup plan. You're the plan. You've always been the plan. I just couldn't see it. Couldn't let myself see it because it felt too big, too important, too terrifying. We sat there in my car, in the dim parking garage, holding hands like teenagers, and I felt something shift in the universe. 7 years of longing, of unspoken words, of loving from a distance, it all crystallized into this single, perfect moment. So what happens now? I asked. Lucas smiled, and it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Now, you kiss me, please? I've been thinking about it all morning, and if you don't kiss me soon, I'm going to lose my mind. I cupped his face in my hands, my thumbs brushing away the tears on his cheeks. You're sure? You just got out of a relationship. You're vulnerable and hurt, and I'm sure. He leaned closer, his breath warm against my lips. I've never been more sure of anything. I closed the final distance between us. Kissing Lucas was like coming home. Like every good thing that had ever happened to me condensed into a single point of contact. His lips were soft, moving against mine with a tenderness that made my chest ache. He tasted like coffee and possibility, like every dream I'd ever had, suddenly made real. His hands came up to tangle in my hair, pulling me closer, and the kiss deepened. 7 years of want poured into it. 7 years of imagining this exact moment. But the reality was so much better than any fantasy, because this was real. This was Lucas, kissing me back like I was oxygen, and he'd been drowning. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. I can't believe we waited this long, he whispered. We were both scared. But we're not anymore, right? Terrified, actually. But in a good way. In an I single quotes M dash about dash to dash jump dash off dash a dash cliff dash but dash I dash no dash use single quotes LL dash catch dash me way. I kissed him again, softer this time, savoring it. I'll always catch you. I promise. We made it up to my apartment in a daze, Lucas's hand never leaving mine. Once inside, surrounded by his boxes and bags, the reality of the situation settled over us. This is happening, right? Lucas asked, looking around at his belongings scattered across my living room. This is real? As real as it gets. I pulled him close, wrapping my arms around his waist. You're here. We're here. And I'm going to spend every day making sure you know how loved you are. He melted into the embrace, his head on my shoulder. I don't deserve you. Yes, you do. You deserve someone who sees you, who values you, who would move mountains to make you happy. And I intend to be that person if you'll let me. I'll let you. He pulled back to look at me, his hands framing my face. But you have to let me do the same for you. This isn't one-sided. I want to know everything about you, Adrian. All those hidden parts you never show anyone. I want to be the person you trust with your vulnerabilities, your fears, your dreams. Deal. We spent the rest of the afternoon unpacking his things, but this time it felt different. Not like temporary storage, but like two lives merging. Lucas's books slotted onto my shelves, his clothes in my closet, his art prints on my walls. Each item felt like a promise, like we were building something together. As evening fell, we ordered pizza and sat on the couch, the same couch where we'd fallen asleep together the night before. When everything had been different, when we'd been best friends instead of whatever we were now, so Lucas said, stealing a pepperoni off my slice. What do we tell people about us? What do you want to tell them? The truth. That we've been idiots for 7 years and finally figured it out. Maya's going to say, I told you so about 1,000 times. She knew? Lucas looked shocked. How did she know? I told her. 2 years ago, when I couldn't keep it inside anymore. She's been trying to get me to confess to you ever since. We could have had 2 more years together, we have now, and hopefully a lot more years ahead. Lucas set down his pizza and turned to me, his expression serious. Adrian, I need you to know something. I'm still a mess. I'm still figuring out who I am outside of relationships, outside of trying to be what other people need me to be. It's going to take time for me to be whole. I don't need you to be whole. I need you to be you. Messy, complicated, beautiful you. But what if I hurt you? What if I'm not ready for this, and I kissed him, cutting off the spiral of anxiety I could see forming? Then we'll work through it. Together. That's what relationships are: two people, choosing each other every day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. You make it sound so simple. It's not simple. But it's worth it. You're worth it. He kissed me again, deeper this time, his hands sliding under my shirt, skin against skin. Heat bloomed where we touched, and I felt want unfurl in my stomach, desire that I'd suppressed for years suddenly free to exist. Bedroom? Lucas whispered against my lips. Are you sure? We don't have to rush, I'm sure. I want you, Adrian. I've wanted you for longer than I knew how to admit. We stumbled to the bedroom, a tangle of limbs and laughter and desperate kisses. Clothes disappeared in a trail across the floor, and then we were on the bed, skin against skin. And it was everything I'd imagined and so much more. Lucas was beautiful in the fading light, all smooth brown skin and elegant lines, his dark eyes heavy-lidded with desire. I took my time exploring him, learning the landscape of his body, finding the places that made him gasp, made him arch into my touch. I love you, I whispered against his collarbone. I love you so much. Show me, he breathed. Please, Adrian. Show me, and I did. With my hands, my mouth, my body, I showed him what 7 years of longing felt like, what it meant to be wanted, treasured, adored. We moved together like we were made for this. Like our bodies had been waiting all this time to finally align. When we finally collapsed together, breathless and sated, Lucas curled into my side, his head on my chest. Right over my heart. I can hear your heartbeat, he said softly. It's racing. That's what you do to me. What you've always done to me. He pressed a kiss to my chest. I'm never letting you go. You know that, right? I'm counting on it. We fell asleep tangled together, and when I woke in the middle of the night, I found Lucas watching me in the darkness. Can't sleep? I asked, my voice rough. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and this will all be a dream. That I'll be back in David's apartment, or alone, and you'll just be my best friend again. I pulled him closer, kissing his forehead. Not a dream. I'm here. We're here. And tomorrow morning, you'll wake up in my arms. And the morning after that, and the morning after that. Promise? Promise. He settled against me with a contented sigh, and I felt him relax into sleep. I stayed awake a while longer, just holding him, marveling at the impossible miracle of this moment. 7 years of loving him in secret. 7 years of watching him choose other people. 7 years of being the friend, the supporter, the one who was always there but never chosen. And now, finally, I was chosen. We had chosen each other. The next few weeks were a blur of adjustment and discovery. Lucas officially moved in, transforming my apartment into ours. We fell into an easy rhythm: morning coffee together, stolen kisses between work calls, evenings spent cooking dinner and talking about our days. It felt natural, like we'd been doing this forever, like we'd just been waiting for the right time to begin. We told our friends, who reacted with a mix of surprise and about time. Maya took full credit for the whole thing, claiming her years of pestering had finally paid off. Lucas's friends from work threw us an impromptu celebration dinner, complete with embarrassing toasts and unsolicited advice. But it wasn't all easy. Lucas had moments of doubt, times when the weight of his previous relationship failures would crash over him, and he'd pull away, convinced he was going to ruin this too. And I had my own fears that I'd built him up too much in my mind, that the reality of us together couldn't possibly live up to 7 years of longing. One night, about a month in, we had our first real fight. Something stupid about dishes in the sink that spiraled into deeper insecurities. Lucas accused me of putting him on a pedestal, of loving an idealized version of him instead of the real person. I accused him of waiting for me to fail, of looking for reasons to prove this wouldn't work. We went to bed angry, lying on opposite sides of the mattress, not touching. I couldn't sleep. After an hour of staring at the ceiling, I turned to find Lucas's eyes open in the darkness. "I'm sorry," we said simultaneously. Lucas laughed, broken and beautiful. "I'm terrified of losing you. Of being too much or not enough. Of proving David right that I'm exhausting and needy and impossible to love."
Ow.
"You're not impossible to love. You're impossible not to love. But you're right that sometimes I forget you're human. Sometimes I still see you the way I did for all those years, perfect, untouchable, too good for me. And that's not fair to either of us." Shifted closer, and I met him in the middle. "We're going to mess up sometimes. It's both of us. But we can't let that scare us into running away." "I don't want to run. I want to stay. I want to fight for this." For us, me too. We held each other in the darkness, and I felt something settle in my chest. This was real. Not a fairy tale, not a fantasy, but something messy and complicated and worth fighting for. 3 months after that first confession in my car, Lucas surprised me with tickets to an art exhibit, a Caravaggio retrospective at the Seattle Art Museum. The same artist we'd bonded over 7 years. Ago in that art history class, we stood in front of the Calling of Saint Matthew, the painting where the tax collector Matthew looks up in shock as Jesus points to him, calling him to a new life. Light streams through the darkness, illuminating Matthew's face, showing the exact moment everything changes. "That's how I felt," Lucas said quietly, his hand in mine. "When you told me you loved me, like I'd been sitting in darkness my whole life, and suddenly someone shone a light directly on me. Like I was being called to something better, something I never knew I could have." I squeezed his hand. I was terrified when I said it. "Thought I was about to lose you? You know what I realized?" He turned to face me. I wasn't surprised. Not really. Some part of me had always known. I just needed to be ready to hear it. To accept that, maybe, just maybe, I deserve to be loved by someone like you, someone like me. Someone good. Someone steady. Someone who sees all my flaws and loves me anyway. Not anyway, I corrected. I love you including your flaws. They're part of what makes you who you are. He kissed me then, right there in the museum gallery, surrounded by Renaissance masterpieces and tourists with cameras. When we broke apart, he was smiling. "Move in with me," he said. "You already live with me?" "I know, but I mean officially. Not just your apartment where I'm staying. Our apartment. Our home. Our life together." "Lucas, it's been 3 months. Are you sure?" "I wasted 7 years being unsure. I don't want to waste another second. I love you, Adrian Chen. I want to build a life with you. So what do you say?" I thought about David's words in the parking garage, about being stuck in the friend zone, always hoping and never getting what I wanted. I thought about 7 years of longing, of secret love, of settling for friendship when I wanted so much more. And then I thought about right now. Lucas's hand in mine, his eyes bright with hope, his heart open and offered freely. "Yes," I said. "Absolutely yes." We repainted the apartment together, choosing colors that felt like both of us, deep blues and warm grays, accents of gold. Lucas's architecture books sat beside my design magazines, his running shoes by the door next to my sneakers, 2 toothbrushes in the bathroom, 2 coffee mugs in the sink. 2 lives intertwined so completely I couldn't remember what it felt like to be separate. We still had our moments. Days when Lucas's anxiety got the better of him and he needed space. Days when my tendency to fix everything instead of just listening caused friction. But we worked through it, learning each other's languages, building something stronger with every challenge we faced. My sister Maya came over for dinner one evening, bringing her girlfriend Sophia. As the 4 of us laughed over homemade pasta and too much wine, Maya pulled me aside in the kitchen. "You look happy," she observed. "Really happy. Not that fake happy you used to do when you were pretending to be fine." "I am happy. Terrifyingly happy. Sometimes I wake up and can't believe this is my life."
Heck, you deserve it.
"You both do." She hugged me. But if he hurts you, I'll still destroy him. Just so we're clear. Noted. But I don't think you'll need to. Maya, he's everything I hoped he would be. Everything I was afraid to hope for. Good. Because I haven't seen you smile this much in years. When we returned to the table, Lucas was telling Sophia about his new job. He'd left his old architecture firm to work at a nonprofit focused on sustainable housing. It was less money, but more meaningful. And I'd never seen him more passionate about his work as he talked. Animated and bright, our hands found each other under the table. His thumb traced circles on my palm, a gesture so familiar now it felt like breathing. This, I thought, this is what I was waiting for. Not just Lucas, but this version of Lucas, the one who knew he was loved and let himself be happy. The one who'd stopped running from his own heart. And this version of me, the one who'd finally been brave enough to speak his truth. Hood stopped settling for crumbs of affection and demanded the whole feast. We were back at the art museum. Same Caravaggio exhibit that had been extended by popular demand. But this time, we weren't looking at the paintings. We were standing in front of a display case containing a small velvet box. No, wait. That's not right. Let me back up. We were walking through the museum on a random Tuesday afternoon, playing hooky from work. When Lucas stopped in front of the Calling of St. Matthew again, do you remember what I said the first time we stood here? He asked about feeling called to something better. I remember. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. About moments that change everything. About being brave enough to answer the call, even when you're scared. He took my hand, and I noticed it was trembling. Adrian, this past year with you has been the happiest of my life. Not because it's been perfect, it hasn't. Because it's been real. Because I wake up every morning next to someone who knows all of me and chooses me anyway. Because you've taught me what love actually feels like when it's right. And my heart was racing. I looked around and noticed people starting to gather phones out. Lucas, what are you? He dropped to one knee, pulling a small box from his pocket, and time stopped. I don't want to wait anymore. I don't want to waste another day being too scared to claim what I want. And what I want is to spend the rest of my life with you. To build a home together, a family, a future. To be your husband and have you be mine. He opened the box, revealing a simple silver band with a small blue stone that matched my eyes. Adrian Chen, will you marry me? The museum had gone quiet. Every eye was on us. And all I could see was Lucas, on one knee, offering me everything I'd ever wanted. Yes, I said, my voice breaking. Yes, 1,000 times yes. He stood, sliding the ring onto my finger, and then we were kissing, laughing, crying, as the crowd around us erupted in applause. Later, when we were back home, curled up on our couch in our apartment, I kept looking at the ring on my finger. When did you know? I asked. When did you decide you wanted to marry me? Lucas thought for a moment. Honestly, probably that first night. When I showed up at your door in the rain and you didn't ask questions, just let me in. When you gave me your bed and took the couch? When you held me while I slept and made me feel safe for the first time in years? I think some part of me knew even then that you were it for me. But you didn't know you loved me yet. Not romantically. Didn't I, though? I think I was in love with you for years before I had the words for it. Before I understood what that feeling meant. He kissed my temple. What about you? When did you know you wanted to marry me? 7 years ago, I said. The day we met. I just had to wait for you to catch up. He laughed, pulling me closer. I'm sorry it took so long. You were worth the wait. We got married in May, in a small garden ceremony with 50 of our closest friends and family. Maya officiated, making jokes about how she'd been predicting this for years and everyone owed her money. Lucas wore a dark blue suit that made his eyes look like midnight. I wore gray with a blue pocket square that matched his suit. We'd written our own vows. When it was my turn, I took Lucas's hands and spoke the words I'd been practicing for weeks. Lucas, 7 years ago, you walked into my life and changed everything. You taught me what it meant to love someone completely, even when they didn't love you back. You taught me patience, perseverance, and the value of hope. And when you finally opened your eyes and saw me really, Saw you taught me what it felt like to be chosen. Today, I choose you back. I choose your morning grumpiness and your terrible puns. I choose your ambition and your kindness. I choose your strength and your vulnerability. I choose every version of you that exists and every version of you that's yet to come. I promise to love you, support you, challenge you, and stand beside you through every twist and turn life brings us. You are my best friend, my partner, my home, and I cannot wait to spend the rest of my life proving that to you. There wasn't a dry eye in the garden, including Lucas's. When he spoke his vows, his voice was steady despite the tears on his cheeks. Adrian, I spent so many years searching for love in all the wrong places. I looked for fireworks and grand gestures, for intensity that burned bright but fast. And all along, real love was standing right beside me, patient and constant and true. You loved me when I couldn't love myself. You saw potential in me when I only saw failure. You stood by me through every bad decision and every heartbreak, never asking for anything in return except my friendship. And when I finally understood what you were offering, when I finally had the courage to reach for it, you gave me everything. Today I promise to be worthy of that gift. I promise to love you as fiercely as you've loved me. I promise to be your partner in every adventure, your comfort in every storm, your biggest cheerleader and your gentlest critic. I promise to choose you every day, in every way, for the rest of our lives. You are my calling, Adrian, my answered prayer, my home. When Maya pronounced us married, we kissed as the sun broke through the clouds, casting golden light across the garden. And I thought about that Caravaggio painting about divine light piercing through darkness, about moments of transformation, about being called to something better. This was our moment, our transformation, our answered calling, and it was perfect. Papa, Daddy's burning breakfast again. I looked up from my laptop to see our 5-year-old daughter, Mia, standing in the doorway of my home office, her dark curls so like Lucas's bouncing as she bounced on her toes. I am not burning it, Lucas called from the kitchen. It's just a little crispy. I laughed, closing my laptop and scooping Mia into my arms. Let's go rescue Daddy before he sets off the smoke alarm again. Lucas stood at the stove, attempting to flip pancakes while simultaneously helping our 3-year-old son, James, pour orange juice. It was controlled chaos, which pretty much summed up our life these days. We'd adopted Mia when she was 6 months old, a process that had been both exhausting and miraculous. James had come to us 2 years later, completing our family in a way we hadn't known we needed. Perfect timing, Lucas said, kissing me as I set Mia down. Can you grab the syrup? I know. I've got it. We moved around each other with practiced ease, years of partnership making us synchronized. As we sat down to breakfast, slightly burned pancakes and all, I looked around the table at my family. Mia was telling a dramatic story about her kindergarten class, complete with wild hand gestures. James was more interested in building a tower out of his pancake pieces than eating them. And Lucas was watching them both with such open adoration, it made my chest tight. This life we'd built together, it wasn't what I'd imagined all those years ago, when I was just a lovesick college student, pining after his best friend. It was better, messier, louder, more complicated, but infinitely better. Later, after the kids were in bed and we were cleaning up the kitchen together, Lucas wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. Happy? He asked, deliriously. You beyond. Though I still can't believe you married someone who burns pancakes. I married you for your other talents. Like what? Like the way you read bedtime stories with different voices for each character. Like the way you still leave me notes in my laptop bag. Like the way you love our kids with your whole heart. Like the way you still look at me like I'm the best thing that ever happened to you. He turned me around to face him. That's because you are. You and Mia and James, you're everything I never knew I needed. We're pretty lucky, I agreed. No, he kissed me softly. Lucky is winning the lottery. Finding a 20 in your jacket pocket. This isn't luck. This is choice. You choosing to love me for 7 years when I was too blind to see it? Me choosing to finally open my eyes. Both of us choosing each other every day, even when it's hard. That's not luck, Adrian. That's love. And he was right. What we had wasn't luck or chance or fate. It was the result of years of friendship, of patience, of being brave enough to speak our truths and vulnerable enough to hear them. It was built on a foundation of trust and laughter and the kind of deep, abiding affection that only comes from truly knowing someone. That night, lying in bed with Lucas's head on my chest, I thought about that scared 22-year-old version of me, silently loving his best friend, convinced he'd never be chosen. I wished I could tell him that it would all work out, that the wait would be worth it, that one day he'd have everything he'd ever dreamed of and more. But maybe he needed that journey. Maybe we both did. Maybe all those years of longing taught us to value what we had, to never take each other for granted, to choose each other consciously and deliberately. I love you, I whispered into the darkness. I love you too, Lucas murmured back, already half asleep. My best friend, my husband, my home. And I smiled, because that's exactly what he was to me, what he'd always been from that very first day. Home.